Uh, just as a reminder, if you look in the description below the video, you can find links to the index, which will include this meeting and the last 3 years, what we did on this meeting. And then there's also an index to the original ROS agriculture stuff, which is at least 3/4 complete. So you can go check that stuff out if you want. And then you can always click the link and go back to our main YouTube page if you want to see that stuff. So we didn't do a meeting for 2 weeks. The first one, we did the meeting, we just didn't record it. And the next one, Al's vehicle was broken, so we didn't do the meeting. And then we didn't do one yesterday on Thanksgiving because it was Thanksgiving. So now today is Friday, and we're getting around to get caught up on that. So that's pretty much what has happened there. Now, one of my big events was Windows decided to upgrade my Windows computer and decided to put Edge on my computer, which it's probably always been on there, but they put a prominent icon just to remind me I could go use Edge if I want to. And then they also put an icon for Copilot. So they decided to shove Copilot down my throat before they stopped updating Windows 10. And that was the final straw. So I've been meaning for a long time to get off the Windows computer. So I moved, or I hooked up a Linux computer, and I've got Zoom running on that, and I spent all week trying to get that configured. And when we started the meeting today, I was going through the stuff with Al. We spent 45 minutes of me trying to get the settings correct and get it so it's going to work. So today is a big experiment. We'll see what happens here. And in general, it's a bigger, faster laptop. It's got more memory, and it just seems to be working much better. I haven't had anything pop up saying, "Oh, you're low on resources." So that's what Windows always did to me. So I did that, and what was the other thing? I gave some thought to. I keep whining about. I want to try the sprocket and the proximity sensor, and um, I found this thing, which is a wooden bracket that I made one time. And what I want to do is put a shaft up through the bottom like this, and then put nuts on to hold that. So that gives me an axle. And then if I put the wheel, here's a wheel that's got a 5/8 inch hole in it and a sprocket on it. It's just something random that was laying around. So that's a number 35 sprocket, but it should work for testing. So I want to be able to put that onto this frame with the axle sticking up through it, and then I can spin that on there. So I'll just have to hold the proximity sensor up next to that. And I spent all day yesterday digging up these parts, and it got to be the middle of the night, and I was going to glue a piece of 2x4 on the back as a block. I couldn't find any glue, and I finally found some glue and decided it was too late. I didn't want to do anything. So that's something else I did this week. What else was I going to mention? So hopefully I'm done with my Windows computer completely. There'll be random stuff will pop up, like the uBlocks setup software is, I think they only have a Windows version on that. But Juan at one point said he was running Wine under Linux, and he could get the uBlock stuff to run under that. So when the time comes, I'll have to try to get that to work or revert back to my Windows computer and complain and fight with that. So let's see, get this running. Okay, so I think that's all I have. So I'll turn it over to Al.
That big wood wheel thing with the 5/8 bolt that you stuck through it, what, maybe I wasn't listening close enough. How are you going to use that wood wheel?
It just simply the wood is just a base for it, so I can lay it on the table, and then
Oh,
the shaft sticking up is just to put the axle on. That's just an axle for the wheel to spin on, so I can just have it there in front of me and be able to turn the thing. Instead of having 6 hands to make all this work, I'll have the
right.
wheel
For
mounted to
desk.
something, so I can use one hand to turn the wheel and the other hand to hold the proximity sensor up next to it. So as the teeth are going by like this, I can just have the proximity sensor. As I turn the wheel, I should be able to do that. So if I'm just moving the proximity sensor by hand, I can put it, wherever I want.
Got it.
Either try coming in from the points, or I think Matt was coming down from the top like this
Right.
on
So you
his.
can
So
test that for
yeah,
desk checking.
I could try that. And the sprocket happens to be a number 35 sprocket, so it's got fairly small teeth. And I don't have one of the big ones. Matt used a 50 tooth or 50 number 50 sprocket. That's got I think, half-inch spacing between the teeth on that. So that it could be you have to go something bigger if you want to do that. And
Uh,
I don't intend to actually use that, but I just wanted to verify that it does indeed work. And if we keep telling people, oh, you could put a sprocket on there and make that work, we should at least have something that says, here's what we tried, and here's a little tutorial on how to do that. So
nice.
once I get the sensor hooked up, it's got a light right on the back of it, so I can just watch the light as I turn it and see, check my spacing, and then hook it up to whatever, like an Arduino or something, and then have it just go to the Arduino serial plot screen, and you should be able to see the square wave that the thing puts out. So as you turn it, I want to see if I can get a 50% duty cycle, or if it works at all. And the other thing is I've got an oscilloscope that I can hook right up to the sensor, and it's a fairly modern one, and it came with a utility that you can load on a computer, which unfortunately it only runs under Windows, but I can hook that up with a USB cable to my computer and get the full computer screen to show up. So like, say for a meeting like this, I can pull up a screen that shows the oscilloscope screen, and then as I turn the thing, show it on an oscilloscope plot, because it's a digital oscilloscope and does fancy stuff. So that's another thing that might be worth experimenting with.
Nice.
And I guess I did think of one. I was thinking this week, I was trying to think of a concept that I think I was going to call it inline editing. So if I say fire up a Zoom meeting and then say click record, and I'll say, I'm about to do this and this and this, and then hit the pause button, and it'll stop, and then I can go to my thing and say either switch cameras or fire up a stored video or something. So that's all ready to go, and then hit play, or I hit pause again. I think it's always called pause. So you hit pause again, it starts recording, and then I can have it, do the video up to the point I want, and I just hit pause again, and it'll stop recording. And then or I can, say switch from one camera to the other and move stuff around and whatever. So I was going to experiment with that too and see if I can get any, make any sense of that, as opposed to just recording a bunch of stuff and then firing up a video editor, which now that I'm switching to Linux, I'll have to see what kind of Linux video editor can I get. Maybe, maybe that's just the way to do it. So I just go around and record a bunch of stuff and then come back and fire up the video editor and cut and paste all that stuff together to make it work. So
My,
anyway, that it just seems like, rather than sitting there babbling like I'm doing now, you can have something, set up with a script and say, I want to do this, and then have little videos of different things you're trying to do, and then try to merge all that stuff together. So
nice.
in fact, I think YouTube might have some kind of an editor, but I've never played with that. So,
Never played with it, but
theoretically,
I've seen it.
yeah, maybe upload all my little video snippets and then go in there and merge it together. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens on that.
Cool.
So that's all I've got.
So from a sharing standpoint, so this is related to robotics in the sense that I need a good place to store files, and my NAS drive is on its last leg. The drives are fine, but the Synology enclosure in the operating system is no longer supported, and the on-off button is not really working well on the NAS drive. So I've been on the hunt for a new NAS drive. This is a hat that goes on a Raspberry Pi 5. There are 1, 2, 3 PCM, 4 NVMe slots on this hat, and I'm now on my second iteration of rebuilding, maybe third iteration of rebuilding this thing. I'm not quite sure what's failing, but I've been challenged with that. Effectively, what happens is everything's fine. I walk away, I come back, and the boot partition, or the partitions in general, fail. They're no longer there. So literally, I end up with a disk that I can't recover the partition. It's like the drive is completely wiped out. And I was thinking that it was a power issue. There was a power failure and I lost power. And so I went and got this fairly low cost 360 watt just so I could put it on the shelf and power only the RPi with it. That hasn't arrived yet. But then today I didn't lose power as best I know, and it failed again. So it's very, very frustrating. So I got one of these little single slot deals, and I'll put one of these drives in here just to test the drive a little bit more, just connected to USB, not, separate this hat and try to see if it's physically a drive issue. And so that'll be the next test. I did find the price of these things have come down, which is a 7-port powered USB hub. All of them are USB 3, which is nice. So my intent is connect this to the RPi. What I'd like is to connect this to the RPi as well. Have a single one of these connected into here to back up the hat. But at the moment, I'm wondering if one of two things is happening. Either this hat is buggy or these drives that I have are unstable. So one of those two things is going to happen. And that's what I've been messing around with. But I did get it to work. And so as an example of what I can do with this is there's some software that you can use to sync your phone with this. And you can do that today with OneDrive, Microsoft's product, or Google Drive. But, I just thought it would be better to not necessarily have to use their platform, but you can take a picture on your iPhone or your phone. This happens to be an Android, and have that photo synchronized with. Doesn't have to be this hat, but any drive on the RPi 5, and it's there immediately. So if you take a screenshot, it's there on my Ubuntu or an Ubuntu machine immediately, instead of fiddling around with downloading it and trying to show it. So that's just an example of how I would use this if I get it to work. The other
Comment on that. One thing, just for Al's benefit right now. Now we're running this. While he was sharing his screen, the little icon on the right that I can move around and record, that was switched. When he was talking, it would switch to him, and otherwise now it's switched back to me. But now he's not sharing his screen. It's just showing me. It's not showing.
I can share my screen again.
So now if I start talking, yeah, it switches back and forth, whoever's talking. But as soon as you stop sharing, then it just goes back to me and doesn't do anything. So there's something else goofy there I need to track down. Oh, so a question on this NAS drive with everything you just went through. So basically, when you're done, you can just leave this sitting on the shelf turned on, and you can go to your Ubuntu machine, and if you map that to your machine, then it's just like another drive out there. Is that how you would use
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Is there kind of like so if you want to do a backup, you could get, say, any backup software and say on a daily basis, copy stuff from here out to that drive, and that should take care of itself then?
That's exactly what I was intending on doing. And because this hat, I don't know if this hat is buggy or not, but I was going to put another drive on this stick, plug the USB into this, which is also connected to the RPi sitting on the shelf, and have, a backup of this. So anyway, just to protect, because I'm definitely not comfortable with the stability of this thing yet. for one, and I don't know why, but with a power supply on the way, I'll be able to rule that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the point where I need to back up my computers because I haven't done it for years. And if my computers die, I'm just screwed. I'll probably just put all my computers in the trash and just give up on everything. So, but if I back them up ahead of time, I might be able to recover them.
Don't do that. I mean, for this was $8 and literally you can get a 500 gigabyte drive to slide into this for $40, a name brand. And so you've got a lot of space there to back something up.
Yeah, I got a whole stack of little the external drives that plug into the USB, and I've got a bunch of them the mechanical drives, and I got like three of them that are solid state drives. So I got plenty of drives. I just need to sit down someday and say figure out which directories and just copy them out and do it that way. I did find out just a warning for everybody. If you say, oh, I want to back up my Windows computer, and you go to the Windows backup and say, do it. And sure enough, it'll make a backup for you. But the only way to use it, you have to just reinstall all that. You can't, it's not good for anything once you create that backup. So I found that out before. So that's why I'm just thinking I'm just going to find directories that I want and just copy those out to some random hard drive to back it up that way to give me something to use. So
And this, speaking of that, I mean, if you're working in an Ubuntu machine versus a Windows machine, rsync is a nice way to only copy what hasn't been copied before. And figuring out this daggone command was a pain in the butt, but it did a nice job ultimately of copying stuff from two different mount points. So the old Synology drive and the new, in this case, I was just copying family photos, and then logging the output to see what, in case there were any errors. So anyway, it was a nice little use rsync is the message of that, the moral of that story.
okay.
A couple of other things piddling around with. Uh, let's see, I'll turn off share so it's a little bit larger. This is an NRF24 radio that I was testing, and I don't have the teensy in the holder there, but the LEDs, that was the point I was going to make, is I put 3 different color LEDs on there to sort of give me a visual as I was testing this with the intent of taking it outside and being able to see, is it working or not? And so green would be getting more than 10 hertz reception, like 2 to 5 hertz reception. I just programmed yellow for that, and anything below 2 hertz was going to be red, and I just put a blue LED on there, just to test it out as well. But then I got to thinking, well, that's a lot of pins, and what are my options around reducing the number of pins? So I've spent time trying to figure out these multicolor LEDs. And again, that would take 4 pins, and it's supposedly programmable, which it is. I had a hard time getting yellow out of this. But that was multicolor with 4 pins versus what I was, the other through hole stuff. And then I remembered I had some of these Neopixel strips from Adafruit, so I was in the process of trying to pull those out and figuring out the wiring on that. And then I realized these require 5 volts. The Teensy's 3.3 volts. So there's a, what do you call it, a level shifter that I would need on the data pin Adafruit specifically says if you're going to use these on a teensy, you got to have a level shifter, which I threw the other ones away that I had because I was frustrated. I tried those ones before and couldn't get them to work, but there was another level shifter that Adafruit suggested on these. So I'll try that when those level shifters arrive. And then I realized or found that they also have these single LEDs that you can get, and they also have a surface mount platform for these surface mount LEDs. Because if you go with, so I'm thinking on my radio control, or it could be on the robot as well, having these as a status LEDs, you've got sort of fixed dimension of where you can put the spacing on the LEDs is driven by how they're mounted on this strip versus if you go with the surface mount option, you've got a little bit more, you can fit them closer together and you got a little bit more flexibility. So
You can also get those Neopixels that look like a regular LED. So it just looks like a, milky white LED with 4 leads coming out the bottom.
oh,
And they work just like they work just like the surface mount ones. It just might be easier in some cases to use those. And you can wire those in series to get as many as you want, just like the strips are.
that's an even better idea because that, again, for the remote control, I wouldn't, as tight as possible is what I would be after. Do you remember who you saw who's selling those?
I bought a package from MPJA
Hmm.
that they said is like a PL something. So it had a weird part number, and I've never actually tried them, but I think they run the same protocol and will work. And probably go look at Adafruit, and they'll probably sell you ones that are like that too. So, and I could share my screen and pull some stuff up, but just before we started recording, I found out screen sharing doesn't work quite as well as I'd like it to on all this stuff. So here, let me just try that since we're experimenting here, or we're not experimenting, but let me try experimenting. So this is this screen that should be showing on there. If I say, come on, get out of the way. If I say Adafruit and just say, what do they call it? They call them Neopixels.
Through hole. Yeah, it was up, scroll up.
Yeah, like that. So a
Nice.
package of 5 for $5.
Yeah, the
I'd say
daggone
these are the bigger ones down here. I think these are the 10 millimeter ones, and that's probably the whatever the smaller ones are. So
postage.
that's another option if you don't want to get, the strip and cut it and have to glue it down. And but in general,
Yeah,
the Neopixel are nice because it just takes one IO pin to run as many as you want. So that works out really
I
well.
wonder if they require 5 volts, if the voltage is any different on those through hole ones. Boy, I would like that to not have to fart around with the level shifter.
And what I
Power
do,
them with 5 volts.
and they probably be in Adafruit, they're gonna have a thing that says, here's how give you a whole page on how to make these things work. And I
Yeah,
see
and
my screen's really big for some reason.
they do a nice job of giving tutorials.
So what it comes to like a level shifting like you want to do right now, if you just get a what's it, LSTTL? There you can just get logic chips that you run it on 5 volts, so the outputs will be 5 volts, and then the inputs will will understand 3.3 volts. So that's another way to do it without buying these stupid little boards with MOSFETs that I can never get those to work either. But just if you get the right logic chip, you can make that work. So I think it's like a 74 LS. I think that will understand 3.3 volts on the input, and then it puts out the 5 volts. So you just wire the chip to 5 volts and feed your signal into it, and it just it's 3.3 on one side and 5 volts on the other side.
And if
So
I'm Googling that, what am I searching for? Or do you mind trying to search for it while you're sharing?
well, let's see. And And the fact that I've said that, let me, how does this work here?
Because
That's it.
Adafruit did have a suggestion on a level shifter, and it was, as you said, it was a one IC with 3 MOSFETs on it, I think.
Like a board.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was an
Okay.
eight pin IC.
Oh, okay. So that maybe that maybe some of these things work, but let's look for let's just try this. And here's some fancy chips that they make to do that, but voltage translation level shifters, translation guide. So here's a translation guide, might be a good thing to look at. Basically, a level translation. But I think if you look at a because to go the other direction, if you want to go from 5 volts down to 3.3, you get one that's a 74 like LVC, I think is what it is. And there you run the chip on 3.3 volts and it's got 5-volt tolerant inputs on it. So, so you can go either direction just by pulling up things here. Let me just pull up, for instance, I was trying to think what a, say, 74 LS. The 00 inverts, an 06 is open collector. I was trying to think if there's just like a buffer chip. It basically any logic chip, it doesn't really matter. We'll go to this one, it's an OR gate. And if we pull it up,
Yeah, I
and
just put in the chat the one that Adafruit was recommending.
chat. Okay, let me see if I can get my chat to work now. HCT. Yeah, okay, because I believe that's non-inverting, and the HCT means it's an H it's a CMOS part, but the what's the deal? The T in there means it's TTL compatible input. So yeah, that if you've got some of those, or even if you don't have some of those, that put that on your list as a way to translate that. Let me pull it up. Yeah, so $1.50 seems a little steep for that, but like go to Amazon and say, show you that part and see what they have for that. So let's while we're right here, let's say 74 LVC, see if they go the other direction. 45. So the 74 LVC will, I believe, go from 5 volts down to 3.3. So the nice thing about using a logic chip is, they're designed to be high speed, and they just simply work as long as you get the right, figure out the right you got to get the right family to make it do the job. But and they even call it a logic level shifter. So that's you can just use that as a regular chip if you want to, but I think here they'll tell you. So make note of this too, the 74 LVC 245. So that will go, the other direction for doing level shifting. It's not a bidirectional part. Well, actually, in the case of the 245, it is a bidirectional buffer, I think. So you read through their description here and see what they tell you on, look at their descriptions on how to do this.
Makes me nervous that you used the phrase, I've never got these to work.
Well, they came out with these little boards. The little board's got like the 5 or 6 MOSFETs on or whatever. And there was some trick to it that, if you use it on like I squared C, it works, because I think I squared C idles high, and then when it wants to say something, it pulls it low, and that pulls the other side low. But if you're trying to go the other direction where you got something that idles low, you try to raise it high. I don't think the logic, the levels, those MOSFET level shifters will do that. So that it's just a pain to get that stuff to work. And they've got plenty of tutorials here, probably. So here again is that HCT 125 you're showing. Let's see, is my screen showing? Let me
You're
check this.
sharing.
Uh, 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 uh. Yeah, okay. So can I leave that open? Yeah, so I
It's,
can, at the box under sharing that says you are sharing. If I pull that down, now it's leaving that open so I can see I can see what's going out to the world here. And say, so they have one down here. It's the HCT 14. So that will do a level shifter, but that's probably an inverting. Yeah, it's an inverting part. So you have to pay attention if you want it to invert or not invert. So I think the 125 does not invert, and then the HCT 14 does invert. So just keep in mind as you're buying them, figure out what you want it to do, and maybe get a few of each just because. And I think if you go to Amazon, you can probably get 10 of these for $5 or something. So that's something to look into. Although it could be these dip parts they're going to be real hard to find, and that's why they're charging you $1.50 a piece for them. Which, if you just need one, $1.50 is not bad, unless you have to pay, $5 to $10 shipping to get one. So,
you do. Yeah, that's the joy of it.
and that's why, again, I go to my universal search engine, which is Amazon, and I'd like to dump Amazon too. I don't like their attitude anymore, but that's still what I reach for. So speaking of level shifters, that's different ways to do it. Now here's I think Terry is using these kind of boards here. Let's pull one up.
Those are the ones I couldn't get to work.
And there's something funny about it. You got to put pull-ups or something. But so Terry has gotten those to work, I think. And so you can quiz him on that, or if he goes back and watches his video, maybe he'll jump in and say, "Oh, by the way, here," he can put it out on Slack and say, "Yeah, here's the trick to doing it." But those are nice and they're high speed, but I can't remember. I don't remember if I actually used them or not. But he actually put them in a circuit and he got them to work, so that worked out for him. And you can get these in like 4 bits and 8 bits and maybe other sizes too. I think if you look around, you can get the chips anyway. I don't know if they make the board. Adafruit seems to make a board for anything you want, so that will maybe work. So, anything else you want about level shifters? Well, we're just
That's all for
right.
me on level shifters.
Okay.
More chaos to come.
I also remember on those Neopixels, Adafruit says put a resistor between your output pin and your first Neopixel. And most people don't say that, but they say to do that. They say if you don't, you'll blow them out right away. So maybe look that up and see. I think it's like a 220 ohm or something they're saying to use on that. So it might be worth looking into that. And because if you blow it up, then you got to unsolder everything and take it out. And so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, we'll see. I didn't when testing to see if 3.3 volt logic would work. I didn't do that, so hopefully I haven't blown it up. The only other thing that I was going to mention, back to share, was in addition to trying to figure out the LEDs for sort of my next generation of radio control, I also was looking at a couple of different potentiometers. And the one on the left, which I got, is a D-shaped sort of the head, so it's nice and firm. And it has at the middle point, there's an indent, so you sort of always got a place to come back to. And it's through hole mounting, which which is really sort of what I was going for. And it doesn't show it actually. Isn't that interesting? This is the one on the right here has some threads on it, which is probably going to be good for me because I would have some sort of plate there and want to, put a hole there and make it even more firm, even though it would be soldered to the board. And the one on the left doesn't have an indent at the midpoint and also doesn't have threads, but I didn't realize that until I sort of had both of them in my hand to compare them to, because I was just buying a couple of, I think these were like $2 a piece, buying them to get the through hole deal, because that's what I was sort of going for. Because this is the sort of honker that I had before, and I'm like, oh, come on, I can do better than that. These are about half the size of the old potentiometers that I used.
I've got some little ones I could send you. They're actually trim pots, but they're, you know, it's a pot with 3 pins sticking out the bottom, so you can plug in a proto board or a perf board and hook wires on it, and it's got an actual knob on top of it. And I don't have one handy here, but I got a whole box on one time when people were throwing away stuff at a company, and they're really handy to have. And so I was also experimenting to see what the video does. That's why I've been playing. If this shows up on the recording, then that's why I was changing the sizes of everything's here. And I
That'd be
I
great. I'll give you my address again and pay for the postage or whatever. But yeah, that'd be cool to test those out too, especially if you have a whole box.
I think they're 10K pots or something, but they're really handy because you can stick them on a proto board and then, you know, stick in wires to hook it up to everything. So they just trying to think. I I'm trying to think if I had any pictures recently, because there's two of them stuck on a board that for my quadrature encoder thing I was just playing with, and I probably won't be able to find a picture of it. So
So that's all for me. A little bit of progress on my NAS and then a catastrophic failure. So I'm back to square one on that and get my UPS going and rule out whether that's a power issue or not. And then test my radios. That's for the week. I guess that would be my goals. Test my radios outside, have some LED feedback, and get my NAS going.
I want to try one more thing here before we're done. As I was playing around there, let's see, here's the so again, I don't know if this is going to show up
I see
on
the
the
logic level converter.
when I'm trying to get a big image down in the corner, and go ahead and say something else.
I don't see a big image in the corner yet.
Okay, so apparently, well, we'll see if that records, but it's, you know, normally when I do the recording, you get a little picture of somebody, and then if you click the right buttons, you can make that bigger. And when you held that pot up, I made that bigger, so hopefully that got recorded that way. So I just wanted to see what that does, because as they say, it's acting weird as far as these little thumbnails of people, and I don't know what else. And if I can go back to this one that shows two of them at the same time, and then there's just the standard one that just shows one person. And as long as I'm doing screen sharing, that image of the person seems to switch as somebody starts talking, but it's just acting goofy, and I don't know if I can fix that or not. So
For the last 60 seconds, I have only seen the logic level converter. I haven't seen anything else.
yeah, it's probably you control that yourself at your end. When you say view, you can say, do you want um I can't think what it's called, but under the view, you can control that stuff. But when I record it, then whatever I'm seeing, I think, at least on the Windows machine, whatever I see would then show up on the outgoing recording. So that's just an experiment to see what happens here. I also noticed at the top it said scheduled meeting time is over. There's a little counter at the top that's telling me, you know, how long we've been recording. I think it said 0 the whole time, so that's another interesting thing. So again, I'm just playing around since I got it on the new computer here and trying to get it to do something good. So I think that's all I got to say for this time.
Sounds good. I'm set.
So I got a button that says end. We'll see. If this works, then the meeting will be done. Oh, it does say end meeting for all. So here we go.